Hello and welcome back to Ushanka Show. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. My name is Sergey Sputnikov and I was born in the USSR. In today's video, we're going to talk about private property in the Soviet Union. So a while back, I discovered the existence of this interesting brochure called the USSR 100 Questions and Answers. It got me curious and I found one on eBay. My edition was from 1986, printed of course in Moscow, by Novosti, which means News Press Agency Publishing House. So we can call this Perestroika edition, and I'll be curious to compare previous editions with this 1986 issue. So as you may understand, this was an important piece of the Soviet propaganda, and this brochure was published in Amharic, Arabic, Bulgarian, Czech, Chinese, Dari, Danish, Dutch, English, Farsi, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Hungarian, Italian, Japanese, Khmer, Korean, Laotian, Mongolian, Norwegian, Polish, Portuguese, Pashto, Romanian, Russian, Serbo-Croatian, Slovak, Spanish, Swahili, Swedish, and Vietnamese languages. Very impressive list. And as I mentioned earlier, this brochure contains 100 questions and of course answers about life in the Soviet Union. So that's your Ushanka Show printed edition from 1986. And today I would like to read with you and discuss the answers about private property in the Soviet Union. Question number 9. What is your attitude towards private property? It's kind of interesting because people who wrote this brochure, they came up with questions and then they provided answers. So they didn't ask, does private property exist in the Soviet Union? They asked about attitude towards the private property. So I'm curious what the answer is. This question was answered by the October 17th Socialist Revolution. Large capitalist property based on the exploitation of hired labor was nationalized. The working class turned it into state property, into the property of all the people. Nah, the working class didn't turn that property into the state property. It was the party of Bolsheviks, Communist Party, that turned it into state property, because originally it was supposed to be property of all the people, not the state property. There was also small-scale private property based on personal labor of peasants and craftsmen. This was a second type of private ownership of the means of production that existed in the country at that time. After the revolution, the latter was gradually transformed on a voluntary basis into collective ownership, the ownership of collective farms and cooperatives. So here they're talking about collectivization without actually using the word. And realistically, why would anyone want to voluntarily join the collective farm, bring their cows and horses? It was forced upon people, and the peasants that refused to do it were put on the trains and sent to Siberia. State and collective farm and cooperative forms of public ownership which have become established in the Soviet Union, far from deprived citizens of having things for their personal use. Ownership of the means of production and ownership of consumer goods are two different issues. In socialist society, every person can have the necessary consumer goods, which are his or her personal property. Okay, I feel better. Just recently, I was replying to a comment, what is the difference between private property and personal property? And looks like I was a good pupil back in school because I explained exactly the same way. So personal property, it's your consumer goods that you have, including a car. But if you use your car to make money, it will become private property as a means of production, and then you could be in trouble. The number of items that can be had and the kind of goods depend on person's earned income, the amount and quality of his or her work. So here, we're talking about equality that not really equal because amount of goods you have, it depends on your earned income. Every citizen of the USSR can own a house, a car, various household appliances and amenities, small working implements for household use, poultry and cattle in rural areas. If the citizen has a plot of land attached to his or her house, as well as savings from earned income, as citizens' personal property and the right of inheritance are protected by the state. And it's kind of interesting, you can read this different ways, but they specify that you can own a house, so just one house. You can own a car, so just one car, but several appliances and other goodies. And I need to look it up, but I swear, a family was allowed to have one car. I never met anyone that owned two cars. And another interesting detail, you own poultry and cattle only if you live in the rural areas, which makes sense, and you need to have a plot of land attached to your house. So if you live on dacha, the summer home, you're not allowed to have chickens or cattle. You have to be like peasant living in a village, and then you're allowed to have a plot of land which was 0.4 hectare, and then only then you're allowed to have poultry and cattle, but no horse. Horse was a no-no. So what have we learned today? In the Soviet Union, there was no private property, only personal property. Personal property can include a house, a car, a cow, a refrigerator, your regular clothing, and stuff like that. Meanwhile, a horse, a pickup truck, or a second house that you rent out are examples of illegal private property. Well, if you like this video, please let me know in the comment sections. We have 99 more questions and answers about Soviet Union to discuss if you are interested, so please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I would like to thank everyone who supports my work with patreon.com or subscribing to my channel on YouTube with the membership. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Ты куда это? Здрасте.
Sergey wrote a book based on diaries he made when he was first in the United States. And as I understand, this is just volume one, right? That's correct. He's going to have multiple volumes coming out. Well, I said, well, since Sergey is kind enough to come up and speak with us, I bought the book. I said, I might as well read this. I read this in one sitting. 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I just couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating because your writing is very compelling, for one. And his story is very interesting for two. It's really interesting. You know, we've lived here our whole lives. We don't have that perspective. It's just so interesting to hear someone else's perspective about what we take for granted. So I hope you really tune in and listen to what he has to say. It's a very interesting, very informed perspective. Sergey is not a historian. He's an electrical engineer by trade, but I find that he has a depth of understanding on history, economics, culture. So just a very observant fellow and a great storyteller. So let's